Hello, and welcome to Chapter 11, Congress from the American Government Textbook, third edition from Open Stax. So in this chapter, we're talking about the role of Congress under the Constitution. So as we know, Congress is part of one of the three branches of government. And so Congress basically has the legislative branch of government, which consists of House of Representatives and the Senate. Some may even say that Congress has more power than the executive branch, but you can decide on that. So what does Congress do, and what its main functions plays a role within government? So Congress represents the views of constituents, right? They're of service to constituents dealing with national issues, provide oversight of actions of the president, of their administration, provide public education and programs, and of course, societal institutional resolution when it comes to societal conflict. So within Congress, though, of course, the House of Representatives and the Senate have also different responsibilities amongst itself. So, of course, you can see here the Capitol is that building at the very top. In the center, it's Congress. That's where it's at. And so you can see here it's surrounded. And, of course, the other complexes where congressional officials work. And, yes, there is an underground little train that actually gets you from the offices to the Capitol building. I've actually had the opportunity to go in the little train, and it's really fun. So it's a really cool, great experience if you ever get to go on it. Bicameralism, right? Bicameralism is defined of having two legislative chambers. So that is one of the unique things about our about our government system is that we have a bicameral system. So again, we have the Senate and we have the House of Representatives. So they have two chambers. So again, our bicameral system requires that two houses to pass identical bills or propose items of legislation. So whenever there is a bill in the House or in the Senate, you can start in either one. Depending on the type of legislation, though, one has to start in the House of Representatives. However, for the sake of this conversation for right now, any bill must go through both houses, right? One bill cannot go through it, and then, of course, the president signed it to become a law. So you can see here the Virginia plan. Remember, if you recall, back when we were talking about, a few chapters ago, we were talking about how our Constitution was formed, or this country was formed after the Articles of Confederation. We saw here that we talked about how the Virginia plan, the New Jersey plan, right? The Virginia plan called for a bicameral system. And of course, representation based on population. Of course, representation on this side was based on state-based. So we had a combination of such thing. So gerrymandering and apportionment of seats, right? So when it comes to the House of Representatives, it's divided up by population. So if you often set of individuals that's in an area makes up one representative. And of course, there has been some gerrymandering going on in the United States, right? And that is the manipulative dividing of election in order to benefit the majority of one party. So gerrymandering would be looking at a map of a state and dividing up the district to make sure that there is a majority of voters that's going to help the party win that one seat. There are several states within the union that have gerrymandering districts, where the party will make it easier for them to win instead of the other party. And so you can hear congressional apportionment states based on the 2020 census. So, of course, every 10 years the census happens, and based on the census, determines whether states will lose a representative seat or gain a representative seat. You can see here those in the reddish lost a seat or two, depending, of course, its population. Those in the green, dark green, there's no change, right? Staying the same House of Representatives because there's no really major change to its population. And, of course, those in the lighter blue is you saw a gain of seats. So you can see here Montana for a very, very long time had basically, I believe, if I'm correct, had one representative. Now you can see it gained another, so that's two. So Montana's having a population growth. Um, of course, Florida and Texas has had a lot of exodus from other states going to it. So you see more people moving there. And so you see states like Illinois, California, Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut, they lost a seat. So you can see here examples of gerrymandering in Austin, Texas. You can see here where examples of gerrymandering where the Republican-controlled legislature had redrawn the House districts to reduce the number of Democrat seats. And so, of course, you can see the gerrymandering to make sure that it split it up and make sure that it remained in Republican hands. So there are three kinds of powers granted to Congress via the United States Constitution. You have the enumerated power, which is explicitly listed stated in the Constitution. You have implied powers. It's not specifically detailed, but it has but inferred. Basically, it makes sense that it gives the power, and of course, inherent power, whether neither enumerated or implied, but assumed to exist under direct existence for the country. So enumerated, again, it's written in word. Implied, it's basically, it's not specifically detailed, but you make a reference to it. And of course, inherent powers, it's neither written nor influenced, or not neither related, but it's assumed. So you can see here, Congress, the United States Congress, has the ability to levy and collect taxes. So you can see here where the money from the Federal Tax Reserve in the fiscal year 2020 happens. So any bill related to taxes or collecting taxes or has to, of course, go through the U.S. House of Representatives, right? That's where those bills goes first. And of course here, of course, whenever the federal government wants to declare war on a country, it has to go through Congress. The shaping of the House and Senate elections. The House of Representatives has always been based on has developed a stronger and more structured leadership than the Senate. Because the reason why the House of Representatives has had more of a structural leadership is because the House of Representatives is voted every 2 years. And you have over 400 members in the House of Representatives. Because of that, you have to run a tight ship. And so, of course, in the Senate, you only have 100 members. And so, of course, with that, you have to be, there's more leniency with it. You don't have to be as strict. And the terms are every 6 years. So you can be a little lenient with that. And so, of course, you won't have to have that much leadership. You do have to have leadership, but you don't have to have stricter leadership as the House of Representatives does. So, of course, campaign funds. One of the topics has been over the decades about campaign funds. That has always been a topic of discussion because some people believe that there should be unlimited amount of money, but of course there are restrictions of how much money one can give into a politician. So here we have the 2002 McCain-Feingold Act placed limits on total contributions to political parties, prohibited coordination between candidates and PACs, which again, PACs are political action committees, and of course, required candidates to include personal endorsements on their ads, right? And of course, you have a super PAC, which has been developed. So you see that here. So super PACs cannot give money directly to a candidate or political party, but they're not bound by the regulations of PACs. So one of the things about super PACs is that they can have a lot of they can raise unlimited funds. However, they cannot directly coordinate with a candidate or a political party. That is one of the things that they cannot do. So that's one of the gold standards of having a super PAC. And so here, of course, one of the most expensive House races was of Steve Scalise, who ran unopposed. And so you can see here the amount of election contributions, the federal elections, right? How much one can provide money to. So we're not going to get into the nitty gritty details of it, such, but an individual can give to, if you're going to give to a candidate committee, you can give up to 2,900 per election. You can see here the National Party Committee up to close to 36,500 per year. Candidate committee, you can see how much money you can give. And of course, you have to, when you're giving to a campaign, an individual campaign, you have to state, you put your name. And of course, super PACs have a little bit much, but you really don't know at times who's giving money to the super PACs. Campaign funding and incumbency, campaign financing regulations, and legal loopholes, are more easily navigated by incumbents than by newcomers. So the incumbents is the people who are already currently in office and and going for a re-election are called incumbents. They know how to navigate the system better than a newcomer, and of course they know how to get around the loopholes. The amount of money that incumbents raise against challengers demonstrate their advantage. So for the most part, more than likely, incumbents, people already in office and running for a re-election, have an advantage and have more money raised than a newcomer. It's not as easy for a newcomer to come on in and take the seat of an incumbent. However, it's not impossible. We've seen over the last decade or so, newcomers come and will win election from the incumbent, even if the incumbent has been in office for 5, 10, or 6 or 10, 12, 15 years or more. Newcomers can actually take out the current incumbent. Incumbents attract more money because people want to give to a winner. So people are more than likely to give the incumbent than the newcomer because they know that the incumbent is for sure. Unless the incumbent has done things that has really irked their constituency, again, it happens. And we're seeing that with the last recent two elections, with the midterm and presidential elections, that, even though you've been in office for a long time, if you don't align with the voters, what they want in your district, they're going to vote you out. You can see here, usually though the incumbent wins office. The nationalization of congressional elections. Of course, evidence suggests that national concerns can function as powerful motivators at the polls. Wars typically have the power to nationalize local elections. So when there is a full-scale war, they really do play a role in the elections, and societal issues, of course, as well. Congressional models of representation. There are 3 models of representation. You have the delegate model, which refers to a representative who sees themselves as empowered merely to enact on the wishes and the decisions based behalf on their constituents. You have the political model, this congressional official acts as either trustee or delegate based on the rational political calculations, how to best serve their district or their state. And the descriptive model refers to a representative who is rooted in his or own racial, ethnic, social, and sexual identity. So you can see here members of the founding members of the Congressional Black Caucus in 1971, 13 members. Congressional forms of representation. There are 2 forms of representation in Congress. You have the descriptive and you have collective. Descriptive is rooted into racial, ethnic, social, gender, and sexual identity of representatives themselves. And you have collective, to consider whether the institution itself represents the American people and not just those elected into office. So congressional representation of the nation, to the extent that Congress as a body represents the entire population. And of course, Congress here is a mixture of different ideologies, interests, but the collective constituency of the United States has even greater level of diversity. So you can see here, you can see here from the U.S., the 117th Congress, there has been an increase of individuals who, from diverse backgrounds, who are coming into Congress. However, the diversity amongst the Congress is not really reflective of the United States. You can still see that the majority of congressional officials are male, white Christians. There is a minuscule of non-male white Christians, and so that's still at the very dominant level made up by male white Christians. Looking at this pie graph here, influence on congressional approval ratings. So, in order for congressional approval ratings to go up, right there, that has a major influence on the congressional officials' vote most of the time. Sometimes congressional officials go against their terms, favoritism, their constituents' favor. Congress rates more highly when things get done. High unemployment levels, of course, turn to lower approval ratings. And of course, war has the power to bring the majority of voters to the Congress. So the division of labor in Congress, right? The House. So the Speaker is the most important leadership position elected by all. So the Speaker is the main leader in the House of Representatives. Each party has a House conference. The majority leader has a considerable power. And of course, the minority leader is the leader in position to the party. So both the Senate and the House have majority and, of course, minority leaders. The whips, right, whip up the votes and force party discipline. Unlike the House, the Senate doesn't have a speaker. Instead, it has a majority and minority leaders and whips. Majority and minority leaders hold power. The Senate's presidency is elected vice president of the United States. So the Senate's president is the elected vice president of the United States. Usually, the president of the Senate has more only comes in really into play when there's a 50-50 vote in the Senate, and of course that president of the Senate, the vice president, has to play the deciding factor. The Speaker of the House, the most important leadership position in the House, is that the Speaker. So that, of course, is elected every 2 years. The Speaker is the presiding officer and the head of the House. The Speaker serves until her or her party loses. So the Speaker, as long as their party is in the majority, there is a House of Representatives for that specific party. So if we're not now, as of this recording, Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House because the Democrats are the majority. But should something happen in the upcoming election where, of course, the Democrat Party loses majority, then, of course, the Democrats go to the minority party, and, of course, Republicans take over the Speaker, the majority, and, of course, get to elect a Speaker. So you can see here, Senator Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is the majority leader in the Senate, and, of course, Nancy Pelosi on the right is the Speaker of the House. We have various types of congressional committees. You have the Standing Committee, which is a permanent committee. You have the Joint Committee, both members of the House and Senate. Conference committees reconcile different bills. And, of course, ad hoc committees, also called special selected, which are temporary committees set to address a specific topic. So you can see here some pictures of hearings from the past. So how a bill becomes a law, right? So in order for a bill to be passed, in order for a bill to be created, it has to have legislation is drafted. The majority leader consults with the Parliament Committee assignment. A hearing is held on the bill. The bill enters markup stage, and of course, there's advanced bills passed to the House of the Committee on Rules. The bill moves to the floor in order for debate and amendments to be added. The House holds a vote. The bill is passed on the Senate floor. Passed bills progress to the president's desk, either for a signature or veto. And once the president signs the bill, then it becomes law. However, the president can veto a bill, but then it will require a 2/3 majority vote by the House and the Senate, which is pretty difficult to do. So you can see here where a bill starts and ends. Alterations to traditional legislative process. Of course, we see some changes going on. Alterations from the traditional legislative process here. And of course, that was Chapter 11, Congress, from the American Government Textbook, 3rd edition. And thank you for joining me.